All right, so today we're going to be looking at this new MedCoT research paper.
MedCoT, medical chain of thought.
Yeah, and it's a system for medical visual question answering, or Med-VQA.
Yeah, Med-VQA, it's essentially, imagine like showing an AI an X-ray and you're asking, is there a fracture here? Med-VQA is all about getting AI to accurately answer those questions.
Right, and so like a lot of the existing Med-VQA models, they're kind of like black boxes, right? You get the answer, but you don't really know how it got there.
Right, and the authors of the MedCoT paper make the case that just getting the answer right isn't enough. Especially in medicine, we need to understand the AI's reasoning, like how it arrived at that conclusion.
Yeah, the chain of thought.
Exactly, chain of thought, because that's what builds trust, right? And that allows for things like second opinions, which are super crucial in the medical field.
So how does MedCoT actually work? It seems like it's kind of set up to mimic how a team of doctors would diagnose something.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's this three-tiered hierarchical structure. So first you have what's called the initial specialist. And this AI looks the medical image and the question, and it gives its initial diagnosis and a detailed explanation of its reasoning.
Okay, so it doesn't just say yes or no. It actually says, like, the steps it took to get to its conclusion.
Exactly. And then that rationale gets passed on to the follow-up specialist.
Okay.
And so this acts like a second pair of expert eyes, and it reviews that initial diagnosis and reasoning.
Okay, so is that really necessary, though? Like, I mean, if it's already been trained on all this data, shouldn't it be pretty good on its own?
Well, the thing is, even the most advanced AIs can still make mistakes.
Right.
They might misinterpret the data or be influenced by biases in their training data. And so the follow-up specialist kind of adds this layer of verification.
Yeah.
And that's super important for reducing those errors, especially when you're talking about, a medical context.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what happens if the follow-up specialist finds some problems?
Well, then it gets sent back for revision.
Okay.
And this is where it gets even more interesting. Okay. Because the final decision is then made by the diagnostics specialist.
Okay, and so how is that one different from the first two?
Well, this is where this sparse mixture of experts, or MOE model, comes in.
Okay.
So think of it like a team of specialized AI doctors, each with expertise in a specific area.
So like one for cardiology, one for pulmonology, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And so instead of just one AI making the final call, you have this whole team of AI specialists weighing in. And the sparse part means that only the most relevant specialists are consulted for each case.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, if the image is like an X-ray of the lungs, then the AI expert specializing in pulmonology will play a bigger role in that final diagnosis.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it makes the process much more efficient.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So essentially, this diagnostic specialist looks at the image, the question, that refined rationale to come up with the final answer.
Precisely. And it's designed to kind of mirror how human medical teams often work.
Yeah.
You have all these different specialists bringing their different perspectives to the table,
Right.
which can lead to a more accurate and well-rounded diagnosis.
That makes sense. So how did MedCoT actually do in testing?
Well, the results are pretty impressive. They tested it on 4 large Med-VQA datasets, and it consistently outperformed other state-of-the-art methods.
Wow.
It even surpassed this much larger model called LAV-Med,
Oh, wow.
which is a 7 billion parameter model.
So even though it's small in terms of like the number of parameters, this hierarchical structure and this MOE model are really giving it an edge, huh?
Yeah, that's what the data suggests, and the paper goes beyond just reporting these overall accuracies. They actually provide these specific case studies
Oh, interesting.
that really highlight how MedCoT works in practice.
Give me an example.
Yeah, so in one case, the initial specialist actually misdiagnosed a brain condition
Oh, wow.
because it essentially hallucinated.
Oh.
It saw fluid in the image that wasn't actually there.
So even AI doctors can make mistakes.
Yeah, it's a little unnerving.
Yeah, it is.
But here's the important part. The follow-up specialist caught that error.
Okay.
It flagged the issue with the initial reasoning prompting a revision, and then the diagnostic specialist, after considering, all the input, ultimately made the correct diagnosis.
Oh, okay. That's good. So it's like it's built in to catch those errors.
Exactly.
Which is definitely something you'd want if it was going to be used for real medical diagnoses.
Absolutely. It highlights that multi-layered approach and that value of having that second opinion built into the system.
Okay, so it sounds like MedCoT is a pretty big step forward in making AI diagnosis more transparent and more reliable. But I imagine there are still some limitations.
Right. Of course, no AI system is perfect, and the authors of the paper acknowledge that they're continuing to work on improving its robustness and addressing some of the inherent limitations of the underlying large language models, or LLMs, that it uses.
Right. The LLMs, those are the powerful language models that are kind of driving a lot of these AI advancements.
Exactly. They're incredible tools, but they can be prone to errors and biases.
Yep.
So as those LLMs continue to evolve, we can expect to see even more improvements in systems like MedCoT.
That makes sense. So we've talked about how it works, how well it performs, but what does this actually mean for the future of healthcare? Where do you see this technology going?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll discuss those potential implications of MedCoT and similar AI systems for doctors, patients, and the healthcare system as a whole. So one of the most exciting things about this MedCoT system is that it's not just about getting the right diagnosis. It's about understanding how that AI arrived at its conclusion.
Yeah, that's a great point. Up until now, AI in medicine has mostly been about, pattern recognition.
Right.
Like finding anomalies or predicting outcomes. But this seems like it's moving us towards a more sophisticated kind of AI.
Exactly.
One that can actually explain its thinking.
And that explanation is so crucial, right? Imagine a doctor is using MedCoT to, diagnose a patient. Instead of just getting a diagnosis, they can also see okay, here's how the AI arrived at that conclusion.
Right.
This allows the doctor to assess the AI's reasoning, maybe identify potential biases, and ultimately make a more informed decision about the patient's care.
Yeah, so it's not about replacing doctors. It's about augmenting their capabilities.
Exactly.
Giving them another tool to help make better decisions.
And it's not just about, improving diagnostic accuracy. MedCoT could also help democratize access to specialized medical expertise.
Oh, that's interesting.
So imagine a primary care physician in a rural area who's dealing with a complex case, right? They could use MedCoT to essentially get a virtual second opinion from a team of AI specialists.
Okay.
Even if those specialists are located, thousands of miles away.
That's a really compelling use case because, you think about healthcare access, that could really help bridge that gap.
Absolutely, especially for people in underserved communities. And, as these AI systems continue to learn and improve, they could potentially even surpass human experts in certain areas.
Yeah.
Think about the sheer volume of data that an AI can process and analyze.
Right.
It's just not possible for a human to keep up with, all the latest research.
Yeah, that's true. But even if AI becomes more accurate than humans in certain areas, I still think there will always be a role for human doctors because medicine isn't just about, data and algorithms.
I agree.
It's about compassion and empathy.
Absolutely.
And connecting with patients.
I completely agree. AI should be seen as a tool to enhance human capabilities, not replace human doctors.
Right.
And we need to be mindful of the potential ethical implications as these technologies continue to develop.
Yeah, what are some of the ethical implications that come to mind?
Well, for example, how do we ensure that AI is used fairly and equitably? How do we prevent bias from creeping into these systems?
Yeah, those are really important questions. And it's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we choose to use it and what safeguards we put in place to make sure that it benefits all of society.
And we also need to think about the impact on, the doctor-patient relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Will patients feel comfortable being diagnosed by an AI? Mm-hmm. How do we maintain trust and transparency in a world where AI is playing this increasingly important role in healthcare?
Yeah, those are big questions that we need to kind of work through as a society. But it is an exciting time to be thinking about, the future of healthcare.
It is.
AI could really revolutionize the way that we diagnose and treat diseases.
Absolutely. And, it's crucial that we have these conversations now. While these technologies are still in development, we need to make sure that we're building a future where AI in healthcare is used responsibly, ethically, and in a way that benefits everyone.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered a lot of ground from the technical details to these broader implications. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more point that you mentioned earlier about these AI systems' ability to kind of continue to learn and improve.
Right. One of the most remarkable things about AI is this capacity for continuous learning.
Okay.
Unlike a human doctor who can only absorb so much information, an AI can constantly be analyzing new data, identifying patterns, and, refining its understanding of disease.
So it's not like a static system.
Right.
It's constantly evolving.
Exactly.
And getting smarter.
Yes, sir.
Or what does that mean for the future?
Well, it means that the potential is almost limitless.
Okay.
As these systems are exposed to more data, more real-world cases, they're going to become increasingly accurate and sophisticated.
Right.
They might even start to identify these subtle patterns that human doctors miss, leading to earlier diagnoses and more effective treatment.
It's kind of like having this team of tireless medical experts working around the clock.
It is.
To improve our health.
And that's why it's so important that we approach this technology with a sense of both excitement and caution. We need to nurture its development while also being mindful of, the potential risks and challenges.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive. We've explored those potential benefits and challenges of AI.
We have.
Using MedCoT as a case study. But there's one more aspect of this research that I think deserves its own discussion, and that's this idea of human-AI collaboration. We've talked a lot about AI as a potential replacement for doctors, but what about AI as a collaborator?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it, and I think it's probably the most realistic and ultimately beneficial way to think about the future of AI in healthcare. We're not talking about replacing human doctors. We're talking about, giving them a powerful new tool to kind of enhance what they're already doing.
So how would this collaboration actually work? What would that look like?
Well, imagine a doctor, they're reviewing a patient's medical history, examining their symptoms, and then they use an AI system like MedCoT to analyze medical images
Okay.
and provide a preliminary diagnosis and the reasoning behind it.
Okay.
The doctor could then, compare their own assessment to what the AI is saying.
Right.
Look for areas where they agree, where they disagree.
And those disagreements could be really valuable.
Exactly. It could prompt the doctor to, kind of re-examine their own assumptions, consider, alternative diagnoses, and ultimately make a more informed decision.
So the AI is like a devil's advocate almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's challenging the doctor's thinking, pushing them to consider, all the possible angles.
Right. And the AI can process so much data, it might even see things that the doctor misses.
Right, and identify these subtle patterns that a human doctor might not pick up on and, bring these valuable insights to the table that the doctor might not have considered on their own.
So it's not about just trusting the AI, it's about using it as like another tool to help.
Right, it's about combining, the best of both worlds, like the AI's ability to process information and find those patterns, but also, the human doctor's experience,
Right.
Intuition and empathy.
That human element. And I think that's a really powerful takeaway. We're entering this era where AI is going to be a bigger part of healthcare. But that doesn't mean doctors are going to disappear.
Right.
If anything, I think it has the potential to make doctors even better.
I agree. It's an exciting time to be in medicine. And I'm optimistic that this collaboration between humans and AI, will lead to better outcomes for patients and a brighter future for healthcare as a whole.
This has been a really fascinating look at AI diagnosis. We've learned about MedCoT, this new system that's, not only accurate, but also transparent and explainable. And we've really kind of dug into, what this could mean for the future of healthcare.
We have.
Things like improving accuracy, democratizing access to specialists.
Absolutely. And, it's clear that AI is going to have a huge impact on medicine, but it's really up to us to decide how we use it.
Right.
We need to be mindful of the risks, but also embrace those opportunities.
And the key takeaway is, it's not about humans versus AI. It's about humans and AI working together to create a better world for everyone.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Well, this has been a great deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all our listeners for tuning in.